Hey, Paul. Great.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee for Monday, October 22nd, 2012. I'm Paul Krikorian, Chair of the committee, and I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague, Councilmember Bill Rosendahl, as well as Councilmember Paul Koretz. We have a quorum, and we're ready to begin. We'll be taking general public comment prior to the discussion of our regular items. So if you'd like to offer public comment on any item either on the agenda or within the subject matter of this committee, please fill out one of these cards and bring it forward. As of right now, I have one general public comment card from Dr. Weissman. So if Dr. Weissman is here, I'm going to invite him to come up for 2 minutes of public comment. If anybody else would like to offer general public comment, please bring this up before he concludes. We'll then take agenda item specific public comment on our closed session items 1 through 6, before we retire into closed session. And then as to items 7, 8, 9, and 10, we'll deal with those matters as we return from closed session. So now we will go to general public comment. Dr. Weissman, welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for answering a question I left with your office a little earlier this morning. Welcome to all. Good to see Bill. Very good to see Bill. Gentlemen, ladies, I came to make public comment regarding the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce presentation that you had last week. But before I do that, this is the beginning of the Budget Advocates activities again this year, and they have become quite a bit more active, as I know you all know, because we're in and out of your offices all the time. I hope this is going to be a year where we're far more effective in taking your messages to the Budget Advocates, from the Budget Advocates to the neighborhood councils, back from the neighborhood councils and back to you. There'll be special efforts to do that this year. The Los Angeles Neighborhood Council Coalition has been very active and will continue to be so, and I hope to have several of you as our guests soon. Our next meeting will be on the 3rd of November, at which time we're hoping to have Mr. Fernando Campos, the new Inspector General, to talk to us. And he's also, in a conversation that I've had, very interested in what the Budget Advocates are doing, and we'll be bringing you a lot of our recommendations, which we're very pleased to say. It sounds like he's endorsing us, we're endorsing him, and looks like we're all going in the same direction. I'm going to bring you material, some of which you've seen before. You know this chart of mine that I've been creating for the last several years that shows how we get behind in our budget for the first 6 months of the year. Right now, we're well over the $267 million we had in the bank account, and can only keep a positive bank account by borrowing from what I believe is an unnecessary tax revenue anticipatory notes process. If that's what we do this year, we're making a mistake, and I'll leave that material for you to read. It is somewhat different from what you've seen before, so I hope you'll take the time to read the new edition.
Very
I'll
good.
keep at it till I get it right.
Thank you, Dr. Weissman. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your good work and that of the Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates. I've not received any more general public comment cards, so that will conclude our general public comments. We'll now take public comments on items 1 through 6 before we retire into closed session. Seeing no cards, public comment on those items is now closed. So, folks, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have kind of an extensive discussion about a number of these closed session items 1 through 6. We're going to stay in this room, It looks like most of the people who are here on those closed session items as I'm glancing around. But what I'd offer for those of you who are here on items 7 through 10 is if you'll just give a cell phone number to Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale will text you when we get almost concluded with closed session, so you can come back, so you don't have to stick around here in the hallway. You can go back to your office if you wish and get some work done. I'll leave that up to you. For those who are staying for closed session items, I think that room, that other room is open, is it not? The other room is open now, so there is some seating available back there if you want to have a seat while you're not here on one of your items. So with that, we're going to go into closed session, beginning with item number 5, and then we're going to do the rest of them in order. So if you're here on item 5, please stay. If you're not, I need to ask you to step out. Session.
Okay, item 6 was the city attorney NCO reports relative to a request for additional funding for outside counsel contracts. We had a discussion on some of the issues regarding the individual cases, and I believe the committee was going to adopt the CAO's recommendations in the report.
Yes, without objection, it will be the action of the committee to adopt the recommendations in the staff report.
Okay.
And that brings us then to item number 7.
Item 7 is a controller report relative to an update on the redirection of ex-community redevelopment agency, CRA, tax increment monies.
Good afternoon, Matthias
Good afternoon.
Farfan with the Office of the Controller. Before you use correspondence from the Controller in regards to the receipt of property taxes from the county in regards to the ex-CRA tax increment funds. If you have any questions regarding the report, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this point. I did want to highlight that there have been some recent developments. On Friday, the council did take action to have future AB 1290 pass-through funds deposited directly into an AB 1290 special fund that's been set up for that purpose. So the controller will do that on a go-forward basis. The controller did receive $3.8 million in the prior fiscal year. That was also identified as AB 1290 pass-through, and that's reverted to the reserve fund at year-end. So we will be transferring $3.8 million as well from the reserve fund to the AB 1290 pass-through fund. We also received correspondence from the county last week, and we're supposed to regularly receive these ex-tax increment funds twice a year on a go-forward basis in January and June. But they did notify us that there were some monies that were being held in an impound account, and those will be released in 30 days. So we should be receiving those to mid to late November, so next month. We weren't given the exact amounts, but as soon as we know anything, we will forward the information to your CLA and the CAO. So again, if you have any questions regarding this item, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Colleagues? Mr. Kretz.
Just want more money. Yeah, I think this report was a little confusing. I wonder if you could tell us how we're going to use the planning personnel that we're transferring over from the CRA and how we're funding those positions.
Well, that I wouldn't have any direct knowledge on personnel that's transferred over from the CRA. I don't know if the CAO would know anything on that topic.
I think there is some discussion about, I believe it's about 11 positions for planning to do some of the activities. I don't recall whether or not that report has come forward yet for adoption yet. But this, what's before you is this update on the actual money that has been coming in.
So this report doesn't directly impact it?
No, it's just an update on, because of the dissolution of the CRA, now as the CRA, the ex-CRA winds down, the property tax increment money that used to go to the CRA, they would need less and less as time goes on. And as a result, that excess property tax funds will be distributed to the different taxing agencies. The schools are one of them, but the city is also the other one. And because of that, the current year budget has $48.6 million programmed into the current year budget from those XCRA tax increment funds. A lot of that funding is one-time funds, and then after everything, the dust settles, then it should stabilize where we would get the payments just on January and June. But depending on how quickly the CRA winds down, will determine how much those payments are composed of. Now, in the past, when the CRA was operating, they did receive a portion of the property tax funds that went to them were labeled as pass-through funds, which would pass through to different taxing agencies. And those are the funds that on the short term will continue to come in, identified as pass-through funds, until the CRA then is completely winds down, and at that point then everything would just become property tax at that point.
And Councilman, with regard to any personnel, as Mr. Serrano said, there have been some discussions around planning functions and also around housing functions. And those, any recommendations regarding personnel for those functions will be made under separate cover. So those will be coming through separately.
Okay, thank you.
So we had budgeted 48.6 million. 26.5 has already come in. And then there was the 10.8 that was not anticipated that we've just learned about from the county, apparently, that is expected in January. What was this, how did that come about? Where did the 10.8 come from?
Yes, and that's another reason the controller sent the correspondence, was that since we received the 26.5 million that was received, came in June, so it posted as prior year revenue. So that's part of last year's closed books. So now for the current fiscal year, we did receive a $16 million remittance in July. That's part of the current year receipts. And that's why we highlighted that we should keep an eye on this revenue source because only that 16 million is counting towards that $48.6 million target for the current fiscal year. We did receive in the correspondence an estimate of the January payment, and that's the 10.8 million that's referenced in the letter, of which approximately 6 million is those pass-through funds, and the remaining 4 million is the actual tax increment money. And so when April rolls around, the county says that they'll provide us an estimate of the June payment. So right now they've provided us an estimate of the January payment, which is 10.8 million. So when January rolls around, hopefully it's at least that amount. And then in April, we would receive another estimate from the county for the June payment. So by April, we should have an idea of whether or not we will hit that $48.6 million revenue target for this category.
We're going to discuss some of the CRA money in the upcoming FSR that hopefully we'll have in committee on Monday. But as the controller has indicated, we did receive a payment in July, $16 million, with the estimate from the county that would give us roughly about 20 through January. Then that would require the city to receive roughly about another 28 million in order to get to the budgeted 48 in June.
Okay, I was confused because there's a typo in the report. It says the 16.95 million, the date it gives for is July 2013. And so I thought that was anticipated revenue, not actually received revenue. So that clarifies. So the 16.95 is already in, as well as the 26.5 that came in June.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, there was some concern that the mid-year 2013 payment would not come in until July in the following fiscal year. Is that right? Did I understand that your office had a concern that you wouldn't be receiving the 10.8 in the current fiscal year as well?
No, we're confident we'll receive it this year. The only concern was that of the 48.6 million that's programmed for the current year, we already received 26 million in the prior fiscal year, so it's not counting towards the current year target of 48.6 million.
Okay. Anything further? colleagues? All right. Without objection, we'll note and file the communication. Thank you very much.
Okay, well,
And that brings us to item number 8.
Yes, item number 8 is the Office of Finance report relative to the accounts receivable quarterly report for the fourth quarter fiscal year 2011-12.
Good afternoon, Edwin Evanesian, Office of Finance.
Good afternoon.
Fernando Campos with the CAO's Office, Inspector General.
Todd Bowie, Office of Finance. The report you have before you is the accounts receivable quarterly for the fourth quarter of the fiscal year 11-12. And we're continuing our net accounts receivable methodology. Using that, our total net accounts receivable is $80 million, of which $10 million is current and $70 million is past due. Not considering the net accounts receivable, the total balance is $443 million, and that's actually $143 million lower than last year. Same time last year was just $586 million. And just wanted to highlight one more thing for you. Page 6, we've developed a schedule of the revenue versus the actual revenue received versus the budgeted revenue for the general fund accounts that are represented within this report. And in the majority of the cases, departments have exceeded or met their targets. And overall, the revenue is $310 million, or 7% of the general fund receipts of $4.4 billion. And we're happy to answer your questions.
So this seems to indicate that we're starting to make some progress in what has seemed to be an intractable problem of moving forward in increasing the collection rate on our accounts receivable. It does seem that maybe I'm just not reading the charts right, but in the breakdown in the report that I have of the aging of the ARs in different categories, the referral percentages appear to me still to be relatively low, even after a considerable amount of time of delinquency. And consistent with the mayor's executive directive, I would have expected that at some point of delinquency, you would get to a referral rate of nearly 100%, since this is not net accounts receivable, these are actual accounts receivable. So why is that? What can we, like, for example, with citywide, even, a year, more than a year after delinquency, or a year past due, we're still only at 63%. So why is that, and what can we do to increase those percentages? And is that an indication of uncollectability, that we already know that it's uncollectible, so we aren't referring it, or what do you see as being the problem in getting our departments to increase the referral rate and the rapidity at which they get to the point of referral?
I think in part, some of it is kind of point in time, and so some departments also may have other processes that are occurring. Sometimes they'll have hearing processes or whatnot that they're going through that may alleviate some of that. But nevertheless, there's still a lot of good opportunity, I think, there in terms of getting accounts pushed out. One of the things that we want to do is continue to get departments onto the secondary collections process. That's still a work in progress with some departments. And I think also part of this is also something that is very much part of what the Inspector General has been working on. And I think basically looking at kind of a model that'll help facilitate a higher collection activity and higher collection rate in total. And I think that's something that I think we're kind of closing in on in terms of what that path may be.
Agree with Todd. Council members, what we are doing is we are trying to get to that 100% mark. As you indicated, that is our ultimate goal. In some departments, like the fire department and also the transportation department, they do have their own contract administrator that's helping us manage the collections of those services or those aged accounts. Once they are severely aged, then they are referred over to the Office of Finance. So that could take, in some cases, 270 days, 180 days after the account becomes delinquent. In those cases with the Department of Transportation and also Fire Department, the outside vendor does have sub-consultants that act as soft collection agencies. So after they've exerted all their efforts, then at that point they're referred over to the Office of Finance. So even though the accounts may show a low referral rate, they actually are in soft collections before they even get to the Office of Finance. In other cases, you have the Housing Department that has lien programs, or they're affording someone's right under due process. So those accounts are not referred over to collection until they've gone through their due process rights. At that point, they are referred over to the Office of Finance. So lien programs with the Housing Department, also the REAP program allows the Housing Department to retain those accounts until that due process is afforded to that individual.
Great. So when you complete your report on this, will you be delineating all of that?
Oh, absolutely.
Breakdown department by department for the major departments so that we can, because there is a difference between fire and general services, or fire and public works, for example, because of the 270-day delay and all that.
Correct.
I think it's important that people understand that, though, so that they don't just treat, compare apples and oranges.
Absolutely.
One other thing I should mention that's also going on here is that we've been really working with the Inspector General to really promote departments getting their out-of-statute accounts written off. And so some of this may also reflect the fact that that they have a number of the older accounts are now pending write-off and out of collections. But we expect a number of these to be coming forward to the Board of Review for write-off, so we should continue to see progress in that area as well.
Yeah, we certainly need to chip away from both ends.
Right.
But I hope we'll get to a point where we're never going to get to the point of write-off of anything that hasn't already been referred.
That's the goal, to be under that 5-year limit maximum. In many cases, the statute of limitation is 3. In some departments, it's 5 years. So our goal is to be under 5 years. So what we're doing, and what we have been doing over the last several months, is a concerted effort to write off those severely aged accounts, getting us to that under 5-year mark. We did send out a memo from the CAO's office to 7 departments asking them to approach the Board of Review for write-off consideration in cases where they had not gone to the Board of Review in over 1 year. We believe that all 6 out of the 7 departments will submit their reports to the Board of Review. We do have one department, the Housing Department, that has indicated that they will not write off the entire amount simply because some accounts are in the lien process, judgment, or in the REAP program, so they cannot recommend write-offs at this time. So at that point, the next report that you'll have in front of you, the September 30th report, you should have a very, very up-to-date portfolio. I'm assuming at that time you'll be about 95% up-to-date, under 5 years.
Great. And when will we be getting your report on accounts receivable?
You should receive that report by the end of this week. It should be submitted to the city clerks along with the proposed concepts and framework for a collection reform for the entire city. In addition to that, about 500 recommendations and ideas that I've been tracking. So it's going to be a lengthy report. I am proposing to have a combined meeting between the Budget and Finance Committee and also the Audit and Governmental Efficient Committee, just to be more efficient in how I present that information to both bodies.
Great. Mr. Kretz.
Yeah, a while back, I think a number of our departments were very unresponsive to some of the most basic things that we needed to do, such as sending out a letter from the city attorney when accounts were overdue. And the mayor directed that every department do it, and then we got a report back that half of them, give or take a few, weren't doing it, which is really part of why we have an inspector general, is to bring more focus on that. Do you have a sense of whether any departments are still sort of renegade bad actors in not responding, or are we getting everyone's cooperation at this point?
Yeah, I have not developed the report card per se to rate each department against the executive directive and also Office of Finance citywide guidelines, but overwhelmingly, most departments that I have reached out to, they have provided the information. They are moving in that direction to get us to the 100% compliance. I've also attended the Revenue Management Committee on 2 occasions, which meets on a quarterly basis, reminding departments of their adherence to the guidelines and also providing that information. So I believe overall the departments are cooperating and providing the information and moving us to the correct path forward.
So you don't have a sense that there are still lagging departments that aren't pushing to meet these requirements?
Not with me at this point, but I will definitely have something for you when I return back with my collection reform document. Specifically, I'll answer that question for you.
Thank you.
My question is related to that, but on page 6 of your report, you mentioned the LAPD has the largest deficit in revenue collections at 3.9 million shortfall. Could you explain that to us?
I believe that's probably largely related to their false alarms. And I believe, when the budget's being established, oftentimes it'll be predicated on kind of the prior experience.
Yeah.
If I could speak for them, they may indicate that what's going on here is that the objective of the false alarms program is to reduce false alarms, and that if successful, then those revenues should be in decline in terms of the number of incidences related to false alarms. So that may be kind of what's occurring there in particular. But of course, I'm saying that off the cuff without having had a conversation with them about that specific item.
Okay, I'd be just curious to what the 3.9 million is. If it's that, it's that. Whatever it is, I just like to.
I'll make sure to check in with them on that, so that when we're back up here again, I can speak to that on their behalf as well.
Great.
Okay, anything further, colleagues? All right, then, without objection, we'll note and file the report. Thank you very much. And looking forward to the Inspector General's report on this so we can continue our good progress on this. All right, that brings us to item 9.
Item 9 is the Office of Finance report relative to authority to approve a refund claim filed by Shopzilla.
Shopzilla.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. Martin Lantion with the Office of Finance. The refund the refund to Shopzilla was previously approved at Claims Board last week. It's for the amount of $123,915.22. Be happy to answer any additional questions regarding.
Can you just explain how the overpayment occurred? Was that a mistake by the taxpayer? Was there a change in status? What was the basis of that?
Oh, sure. Through the result of an audit, the business type for Shopzilla was changed from a higher taxed business type to a lower taxed, resulting in the overpayment.
And I might add, Mr. Chair, it's in my district, and they're really an incredible group, and they've really been cooperating with us, and this came out of that policy of them participating and also creating a lot of jobs, which has been very helpful to us.
Great. Well, I'm glad we could lower their tax burden. So I guess retroactively then, what they had previously paid, that's what the refund amount is.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions or concerns? Okay. Without objection, it'll be the action of the committee to approve the refund claim as stated in the staff report. And that brings us to item 10.
Item 10 is another Office of Finance report relative to authority to approve a refund claim filed by Consolidated Disposal Service, LLC.
Same thing. How did the overpayment come about?
Also, as a result of an audit, the audit determined that the taxpayer overstated gross receipts by including some of the activity that they conducted in the outside municipalities, including Gardena and Long Beach.
Any questions on this one, colleagues? No. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Without objection, it'll be the recommendation of the committee to approve the Office of Finance report. And I believe that brings us to the end of our business. There's no further cards, so we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.